This is literally my third take trying to do this because it kept getting interrupted and ruined for different reasons. But we're gonna keep trying. So okay, we're gonna listen to local hack and dipshit Thomas Sowell try to explain to us why black culture hurts black people. Although black culture through things like sports, music, and food is kind of ubiquitous for to what it means to be an American and American culture. The thing that a lot of these dumbass black conservatives need to realize is that it doesn't matter what subculture you partake in or how hard you work. Racial discrimination and the institutions as they are will still affect you as a black person living in this country. So me, if, for example, being kind of a skate punk, kind of being a nerd, watch a lot of anime, play some video games, collect some toys, does not absolve me from the same racist system, from going to the same shitty schools, from dealing with the same crime ridden neighborhoods and shit like that, and the same socioeconomic deprivations as a kid that chose a different path and became like kind of somebody who's out in the street, kind of somebody who's more involved in drug dealing and gang violence and stuff. We both, regardless of us going in two different paths, still deal with the same racist system and same racist country. And I don't like when black conservatives try to crowbar apart black people that are socioeconomically in the same boat, but we just choose a different path. Like so many different kids and stuff like that, especially young black alternative kids who grow up watching Saturday morning cartoons, trying to get DVDs to watch anime and stuff like that. We grow up poor and we deal with the effects of racism just like the other kids who are quote unquote gangster and shit like that. And I don't even know what the fuck that shit even means really anymore at this point, because like I said, black culture and hip hop is sort of ubiquitous with what it means to be an American. But I guess I'm gonna let him make his arguments, and I'm gonna try to see what this dumbass got to say. Thomas Sowell is an infamous idiot, so I don't really think he has anything intelligent or constructive to say as we go along here.
Culture in which they grew up with was not the culture in which black kids grew up in America today.
So they
There's
had
no gangster rap.
And the reason why gang violence and quote unquote gangsters exist the way that they do, I'm gonna also turn up the playback speed so I can get through this a little bit quicker. But the reason why gang violence and stuff exists the way that it does, and gang culture and gangster rap exists the way that it exists, is because the fucking drug war. I love how a lot of these black conservatives and stuff, I know this is the coming up preview, try to ignore certain parts of history to build an argument to just say that black people are just quote unquote stupid and not trying hard enough, instead of actually engaging with the socioeconomic circumstances that black people live in. Richard Nixon and the Republican Party literally started the drug war, criminalized certain drugs more than others, and started the neoliberalization of the economy in various ways in order to stifle the civil rights gains by black people, women, and gay people at that time. So this bullshit where he's trying to say like, back in the day they didn't have gangster, and it's like not even to mention the fact back in those times, as we go further backwards into the 20th century, you would notice that other racial groups such as Italians, Jews, and Irish people also had a lot of street gangs and also had a lot of crime and street violence going on in their neighborhoods, which is why you would notice today, for the most part, a lot of Italian but I think the best example is like why Irish people and black people have such a like a close relation and stuff like that. Not to say that there's no bad Irish people, but I'm just saying, and that's why, is because back in those times, Irish people and Italians were not viewed as white people. They were, ironically viewed as inside out inwards. But as they ascended into the definition of what it means to be white, they also ascended into, the socioeconomic bracket of what it means to be white. And the same can be said for Jewish people. Not to even say that these people, some people in these demographics aren't, still having it hard these days. But I'm saying, like, when it comes to gang culture and gang violence, like, the literal Italian mob, Irish mob, the Jewish mafia, and other mafias that, have operated throughout U.S. history, they mostly existed and recruited from people who lived in poverty. So, yeah, like, in like this numb brain bullshit where they're like, black people didn't do this back in the day. And it's like, yes, even back in those times, it was black gangs too. When you put people into poverty, they are more likely to partake in illegal ways in order to make the ends meet. So the way to rectify that is through more socioeconomic opportunity and relief, and not by sending in more police, not by this numb brain bullshit where we ignore the past 50 years of history. Whoops, clicked on that by accident.
That was pervasively available in Germany.
Huh?
I mean, the average of black kid today, I think, is probably better off, certainly materially, than say Ben Carson was when he was growing up.
Ben Carson, the famous
black
surgeon.
That doesn't fucking matter. I hate when they do this too, but I say, oh, things are not as bad as they used to be because black people are not legally discriminated against, and black people at least have some type of socioeconomic autonomy. Not to mention the fact, like, who are you to fuck to say that? How do you know what some black kids are growing up with? And it's like, dude, in black communities and stuff like that, things like food insecurity, utility insecurity, clothing insecurity, and even housing insecurity and homelessness and shit, this shit still runs rampant through the black community. So this like pissing contest bullshit where you're trying to compare the poverty of today to the poverty of yesterday is just asinine. Because at the end of the day, it's a lot of young black kids that are growing up and they become those gangsters you're about to fucking try to decry and make white people feel good about for being racist towards. These young kids, still grow up in similar to the same poverty as people did in the 20th century. And just because they got like a free touchscreen phone from the people outside of the strip mall and they can play some games does not mean that they're socioeconomically better off. We continue.
Johns Hopkins.
Right.
Who is immensely accomplished in every way.
Yes.
Right.
I would say that certainly the black kids who are growing up today have a higher material standard of living than I had. The difference was that the schools were good when I came along. They were especially good in New York at that time, hard as that is to believe. But the kids who...
If we want to make a better schooling argument, it's because schools were better funded and subsidized by the U.S. government in taxes. Now schools are exclusively funded by property taxes in the area, which leads to a lot of schools being subpar or even closing when they can't fit certain standards or even pool enough money to provide funding for the school to stay open.
To grow up in that same place where I live, they will not get that same education. Now that can be blamed on somebody, but it has very little to do with what happened 100 or 200 years ago. And it's true in other countries.
I mean, indirectly, it does. This is like going to be one of those videos that's jam-packed with dumb shit I see. And yes, it does. Because slavery has created a white supremacist society, which leads to a society in which black schools are purposely not invested in to maintain either A prison population, or B, maintain a lack of education in the black community, so we maintain the status of cheap laborers. So there's a motivation from the wealthy people to keep black communities underfunded. So this like numbskull bullshit where he's trying to make white people feel good about themselves by saying like schools being underfunded today has nothing to do with slavery. So racist white people can pat themselves on the back and feel good. Actually, there's a indirect relationship there where a white supremacist society will purposefully make a system where schools in certain communities don't receive the funding necessary for them to survive and maintain themselves.
I mean, in Nigeria, for example, there's a tribe, the Igbos, who are living in one of the least fertile parts of Nigeria, who were in fact enslaved in centuries past by other tribes and so on.
Are you serious? Are you seriously?
When the British moved in and set up schools, the Igbos went for the schools. By the time Nigeria became independent, the Igbos had climbed above the other groups that had been ahead of them to begin with. But there are all kinds of cross currents of factors.
I'm not going to stop the recording this time, bro. No.
You cite in Intellectuals and Race, you cite an observation.
Because this computer's acting a damn fool, bro. I'm not stopping the recording. No. I'm keeping going. Fuck that. I was like actually having a good time commentating over this dumbass video, and this computer for this one video is gonna act right. Because it wasn't when I was working on my other project, it was not doing this. I don't know what the fuck happened all of a sudden, but like I said, this time we're gonna keep going. Nothing's gonna stop me from going over this video this time. And like I said, if that means me exiting and reopening, this video a few times to make this shit work, I am going to do so. Fuck that. Because I said I want to debunk some dumbass arguments, I'm debunking some dumbass arguments today.
By the intelligence expert, IQ scientist James Flynn, that just
boy.
stopped me cold. After the Second World War, you've got large numbers of American troops remaining in Germany. For that matter, there's still several tens of thousands there today. And both black and white American soldiers had children with German women.
Oh, brother.
And Flynn discovered that those children growing up in Germany showed no IQ differences at all. The black kids and the white kids, the same. Quoting Intellectuals and Race, Professor Flynn concluded that the reason was that the offspring of black soldiers in Germany, and now you're quoting Professor Flynn, grew up in a nation with no black subculture. Close quote.
No, maybe it's because Germany at this time, post World War II, was trying to actually, and I would imagine there's a huge reason why, because remember, after World War II, that was Nazi Germany, so denazification probably led to a society that wanted more racial equality, and that caused them to have more, socioeconomic advantages for people regardless of what their race is. So I do not take this seriously that there was no black subculture, and it's because they were around black people at home. Because remember, the U.S. government actually put in a lot of effort, especially in the southern states, into socioeconomically fucking over black people from segregation in general. Keep in mind, segregation wasn't just as simple as like, oh man, they just like couldn't drink at some water fountains. Imagine all the socioeconomic opportunities, the jobs, and and all the shit imaginable that you are not qualified to get and you are not qualified for simply because you were black. So I feel like this is a very dishonest misreading of this book. And this book is apparently by Thomas Sowell. Not to mention the fact, because I don't understand what the point is. So at this point in history, black gangster culture, like that was on the thumbnail of the video, not to say that there weren't black gangsters back then, did not exist the same way as it does today. The socioeconomic depravity in America that the black community faced is very fucking unique, and it takes I'll take that back. It takes entire videos for people, and it takes these people, it could take up to an hour and 30 minutes to explain to dumb dipshits like Thomas Sowell, or maybe people that just don't know and want to learn a little bit, nothing wrong with y'all people, about the socioeconomic agony that black people had to face in the 20th century and prior to the Civil Rights Act. And then, ironically enough, even after the Civil Rights Act, there was more systems put in place to compensate for the racial progress that black people made. So this honest way of them trying to go all the way back in history, that because I feel like most leftists and most left-wing topics are post 1968 when we discuss black culture and the things that happened in the black community. But they're trying to dishonestly go all the way back to post World War II Germany after 1945. But me being a kind of a historian can imagine that after the Nazi regime fell, there was an emphasis on racial and social equality for minorities. Not to say Germany was a perfect place free of racism after World War II, but I would imagine its systems were not designed the same as American systems, where socioeconomically in America, black people were purposely targeted with socioeconomic deprivation, over policing, and poverty. So I will never really understand why Thomas Sowell is thought of somebody as like as an intellectual. He's a fucking idiot.
Which means what? Which means they experienced exactly the same expectations. Is this the thing?
No. The expectations are external. The culture in which they grew up with was not the culture in which black kids grew up in America today.
What does that mean?
So
There's no gangster rap.
So we're talking about after World War II. What are we talking about? Today, yesterday, today, before, yesterday, before, like that. And it's like, bro, really? And it's like, we come back to it, I guess, at the end of the day. Gangster rap. First of fucking all, bro. I guess I will just defend gangster rap right now. Gangster rap, the way that it exists, like, first of all, gang culture. And I really had to cuss one of my close friends out a few days ago about this shit because he didn't understand, because he's on an alternative black kid, like I was, or I am now still, even though I'm 28, dog, and not really a kid. But I dealt with a lot of bullying in school and adversity, and I always wondered why black culture and the black community was the way that it is. And when you really dig deep and you look through the layers of all the people out here that are quote unquote partaking in these sort of criminal activities, it's due to poverty. It's not because black people just feel like they're using slavery as an excuse. That's not on the minds of most people who go out there and turn to crime. Most people who turn to crime probably grew up without anything, and they finally they get to a certain age and they snap and they're willing to do anything to survive. Because imagine if you because it's like the layers upon layers of institutions, the poverty and the mental health breaks, and even like the home life for the black mother and father, the institutional weight on the shoulders of a young black person in a society that won't love them would cause them to turn to do terrible things. And that's just a short version. Because at the end of the day, with the start of the drug war, with the maintaining of poverty and white supremacist social structures, this system of economic deprivation, this system of criminalizing blackness and black people, it's a recycling effect where it keeps leading people to criminality. And when gangster rap was first coming out and stuff like that, is actually, ironically enough, was pretty clean. And they talked about loving each other, fellowship, and just their life experience, although it was vulgar. And it's like, last but not least, I don't like this bullshit, especially as a punker. I listen to my Black Flag, my TSOL, Youth Brigade, my MDC. And people pretend like gangster rap is the only music that's vulgar. And no other music can ever be spoken about. Not to mention the fact that a lot of other music, even especially like country and other, music has, criticized the system and said terrible things and glorified violence and criminality. So again, this phenomena of glorifying bad shit is not exclusive to gangster rap. Not to mention that not all rappers even glorify violence. So that's a dumb stereotype upon itself. See, when you dig deep into these topics, you see that things are much more complicated than black people just need to stop listening to gangster rap and work harder.
That was pervasively available in Germany.
So here's what I'm.
And then I'm 100% sure that, first of all, even the white guy right here is fucking confused. So are you talking about post-World War II Germany between 1945 and 1960? Or are you talking about 1988 till today in America? Which the fuck are you talking about? This is fucking ridiculous, man. You got two different countries with two different histories, two different social structures, slightly different economic structures in places, and this fucking asshole is trying to marry these two topics together when they're completely different fucking things. And I'm not getting upset like disingenuously because I'm trying to ad-lib the video. This is honestly that fucking dumb. This makes no sense. This makes no sense at all. Because you cannot criticize gangster rap, which only was invented in the 1980s up till now, with German black kids that grew up 1945 to about 1960 during the occupation. That's ridiculous, man. It's completely fucking ridiculous that you can try to compare and contrast these two fucking topics when they have nothing to do with each other. We're talking about two different time periods, two different countries with two different histories and two different, completely different societies. So like, I don't understand this argument at all. This makes no sense. And it's like, if you were to say that today or whenever the fuck this video came out, that black kids born in Germany and let's say like 2017 performed better than black kids in 2017. That's kind of an argument I have to like research into a bit more to try to understand. But we're talking about two different countries, two different economic systems and social structures with two different time periods. You fucking moron. I don't understand. And it's like, no, it's not that I don't understand. I do understand why people have constantly signaled and said that Thomas Sowell is not taken seriously. Because this is one of the dumbest fucking arguments I've ever went over in a video. Like, this motherfucker makes Candace Owens look like a fucking genius. Because these two topics, again, they have nothing to do with each other. Nothing at all.
Get it. There is something about black subculture in America today that holds African Americans themselves back.
Yes. In fact, I went into this in a previous book on which about black rednecks and white liberals, because that same subculture.
Let's talk about two of your books here. Go ahead.
Because that very same subculture held whites in the South back as well. That in the time this mental testing in the First World War turned up, among other things, the fact that whites from various
what happened? I thought you were friends to working class white people. Although I don't know much about redneck culture, it's like, again, these subcultures as we see them. I feel like all American subcultures at the end of the day, and I forgot about rednecks, really talking redneck, emo, goth, punk, gangster, and all these subculture, even like gym bros and shit like that. Subcultures, especially if you want to say, because I guess I can relate a little bit as like a punk rocker, like these subcultures that are how can I say, more dirty and more blue collar exists because of socioeconomic status that the people are born under. So people unite around certain ideas and certain things to form their social identity. And everybody is not born rich with a fucking silver spoon in their mouth. So being poor causes you to have to turn to more activities and more, diverse ways of thinking to form your own identities. And sometimes the people around you will take these identities too. So like, what the fuck?
5 southern states scored lower on the mental test than blacks from 4 or 5 northern states. And so it really was a question of the...
That's because Republicans don't give a fuck about white people either, and they defund the fuck out of those schools, and they fund these schools through either A, they're funding them through property tax, or B, they defund education in different parts of the world, and that leads to people like white Southerners and others being socioeconomically behind other races of people. So like and that's why it's really that simple. Like don't try to like marry these two things apart. And if anything, Clarence, but if anything, Sowell, dipshit, that is a argument for more social democracy and social safety nets and funding into public services. Because when you defund public education in different parts of the country, you will see those people that are in the lower funded schools performing worse. And the black schools in the inner city have slightly more funding probably than some schools in the South. I would imagine it's not much more. But what people are often the time comparing to, and what he's ignoring on purpose, is that when people compare school funding and school test scores, we're comparing them to suburban, well-funded schools, not to underfunded black schools or underfunded southern schools, to then marry this together to apologize for poverty and defunding education services. I don't know. Being a conservative, bro, and I gotta say this kind of off topic, it's like a fucking it's a gymnastics course, bro. Being a conservative, oh my god. Whew.
which was a handicap to both.
No.
All right. And so,
No. This is
whose job is it to say wrong?
This is dumb as fuck. Again, Southern white children, sometimes perform lower when it comes to certain reading or math levels. Is not because Southern kids have a certain mentality or their parents have a mentality. That's usually because the education that they're getting is not up to par with the suburban, more affluent parts of the country. And stuff like this, I feel like the white and black working class should unite around for more social democratic reform of funding public education, so kids can get a little smarter. But that's just me. Instead of just closing my eyes and closing my eyes saying, you just need to not be a redneck. Fuck all that. Hey, and I even get off topic. Hey, I like my motherfucking fried chicken. I like jumping boats off ramps. I like ramps that shouldn't even be fucking ramps. I like old muscle cars. I like fucking off-roading. I like, I've never done it myself, but I do respect fishing and hunting. If you are a white person and you a motherfucking redneck, embrace who you are and love your hobbies. Don't listen to this dipshit try to tell you who you can and can't be. That's very racist of you, I almost keep calling him Clarence Thomas Sowell, to tell these Southern white people that it's something wrong with them because the culture that they fucking chose. Yeah, just like fuck you for that.
Subculture, folks, you're harming yourselves.
Well, I would think in an ideal world that intellectuals might take on that task, but the world we live in, I've noticed, is not ideal.
All right.
It's not ideal because it's a stupid argument.
Take a look at President.
It's a really stupid argument, bro. It's a stupid argument where you're trying to meld two things together that have nothing to do with each other. Again, people's subcultures does not necessarily... it's like I can also say that. People's subcultures and the subcultures they partake in do not necessarily socioeconomically align with one another. There can be differences at times. It's like, I feel like I'm the best example. Like, you can be black, right? You can be black, and then you can also, be into a different subculture, not gangster or whatever, and then you wind up, still dealing with the same poverty and institutional biases.
Lyndon Johnson speaking at Howard University in 1965.
But freedom is not enough. You do not wipe away the scars of centuries by saying now, you are free to go where you want and do as you desire and choose the leaders you please. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bringing up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair.
It's pathetic. It's not a question of... There's no...
Dab on your dumb ass, bro. Lyndon Johnson blew you out the water. I dare you to refute anything that he said. Everything that he said is 100% correct. You cannot disagree with it. You can only thing your punk ass can do is fucking virtue signal. It's pathetic. It says this and that. No, everything he said is 100% true. If you start a population of people off as slaves, literal property, and then the only thing you do is say that, okay, you're not property anymore, and okay, you can drink at the same water fountains and go to the same schools. You will not fix the socioeconomic damage that's been done to that community. That's fucking obvious. Like, that's like holding somebody down. And the racing analogy is the best because it's like, okay, white guys, start running. But you holding all the black people back. It's like, okay, slavery holding you down. We let you go a little bit to go slavery, but then Jim Crow laws and discrimination at banks and discrimination in the criminal justice system. Then I guess technically, even though Jim Crow laws were repealed and things got a little bit easier, the more complex socioeconomic harm done to black people is still here. So again, another stupid argument.
To be completely fair or completely unfair. I mean, the circumstances are... So someone once criticized the mental test on grounds that the tests were unfair.
You're not saying anything, dude. This doesn't sound like an argument. This sounds like you bitching and virtue signaling. This doesn't sound like an argument.
Who has control of life? Who has control of the past? who has control of the culture that people have in the present.
What are you saying? Refute what he said. You're not going to respond to the clip, are you?
He's, in fact,
correct.
Although good liberal that he was, at least in regard to Lyndon Johnson had a complicated career and changed positions on issues many times. But good liberal though he was at that moment, he was in fact engaging in a breathtaking arrogance.
Yes.
On two counts. One, that white people were the ones who were responsible.
So now we're just going to empty virtue say no. That argument is not that white people. See, this is what they do, and this is what I said in my other video project to convince white people that either A, their racism is okay, or B, that they must live their lives with racial bias. The idea of most black political activists, most liberals and leftist philosophers and politicians is the argument is never and is not that white people, like let's say for instance, bro, you want to know who's my niggas, bro? White coal miners come out of the ground, face, dirty as hell, looking as black as I am. And this white coal miner drives home to, their house and their kids. Runs like, hey, daddy, to see you. They're in their F-150 and shit. Even if that white person is racist, they're not responsible for the white supremacy that black people face in this country. They're not responsible for it. Most working class white people are just people who are most informed and vote in the interest of white supremacy due to misinformation. The argument has never been to blame white people for white supremacy, even though it will take white people's help to undo white supremacy. Every white person is not accountable to the damage done to the black community or other communities like, even Hispanic people or Jewish people. This argument is, and ironically enough, and I will also say this, a lot of white people are collateral damage to the economic disdain and neoliberalization of the economy and the hatred for working people and policies that are designed to have a effect to hurt black people and African Americans also hurt working class white people. Take right to work laws. That's a good example. Take taking away social security and welfare programs. There's a lot of white people that this time around, I think the 2020 election is a good example where you had a lot of old white people that voted Democrat because Trump's stupid ass was threatening to take away food stamps and social security. So yeah, there it is, man. Like, I don't like this shit where they try to bless him. Every activist, like, he didn't say anything about white people doing anything. He said that we need to make institutional and economic adjustments for black people to give them a fair shot at partaking in capitalism. He didn't really even say anything all that revolutionary, although everything he said was correct. And the only way to refute what he said, as you can see, is to completely talk about a different topic or ignore what he said altogether and say that he said something else that he did not say.
Responsible for where black people stood in the race, that it was up to whites entirely. That blacks, as he described,
he didn't say that.
Black people are passive; they're acted upon.
That's right.
And then the second act of arrogance is the supposition that somehow the federal government could fix it.
Yes.
It is.
That's whose job it is to fix it when the government helps people that can't help themselves. This is like I said in that Democratic Plantation video with Candace Owens. It's like the government for me, but not for thee. I noticed that a lot of these dumb motherfuckers, both white and black conservatives, likes the government to do authoritarian fucked up things like the seize people's individual rights and civil liberties to further neoliberalize the economy to make their business interests more profitable. But when it comes to things like I don't know, fixing centuries of racial discrimination, uplifting working people out of poverty, giving people a little bit of a hand to even just simply work in capitalism a bit more. It's like like, dude, come the fuck on. Literally, it's the government for me but not for thee. So when the government is doing something good and for the people, that's bad. But when the government is taking away people's rights or seizing away more public services and social safety nets, that's good. Like, oof, whatever, man.
I agree. But if you wanted to be charitable, you could say, well, he said this in 1965. But if you say, all right, why are people now repeating it in 2013 when we've had
this is from 2013,
nearly half a century of experience to the contrary?
No.
And if you look within the black community, those blacks who had escaped what I call the black redneck culture, they've moved on. So, but it's the culture that different parts of the black community had. They were different.
Daniel Patrick Moynihan, in his famous 1960.
I don't accept this exposition because, again, even especially if we go back to 2013, what is that? 40 years? Keep in mind, dude, it's like I keep saying it over and over again. A lot of the same people who were alive during the civil rights movement are alive today. That was less than 50 years ago. 50 years is not enough time to undo 400 years of institutional bias and complete discrimination against black people. That's from slavery to Jim Crow. So I do not entertain these arguments where within two generations, black people are still happen to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Because keep in mind, black people not only are still living in the same red line neighborhoods with the lack of resources and neoliberalization of the economy forced in by Republicans like Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, and I think Geraldo Ford too, he helped them along. But I will also say, Richard Nixon is a lot responsible for this because keep in mind, the drug war as we know it today, all these gangs, the Bloods, the Crips, the Vice Lords, the Serenos, all these gangs, the Latin Kings, the reason why these gangs exist is because Richard Nixon peddled drugs into poor and, of course, black communities to purposely compensate for the civil rights gangs that we experienced over those past couple years. So that way he couldn't criminalize being black, but he could criminalize being a drug addict. He could criminalize even, being a hippie or a political activist or even proto-punk at the time, Black Panthers and what have you. So that's why you still see a lot of problems in the black community. And that comes with a biased criminal justice system. That comes with, mass deunionization. That comes with jobs leaving America. That comes with, and I know I keep repeating it, but this individualist capitalist bullshit, this work hard, the government shouldn't help you shit, has had a cascading effect that's hurt the black community worse than whites. Just like the fucking Lee Atwater quote. I thought the white guy was just listening along, but seems like he's just as stupid as Sowell is.
65 report entitled "The Negro Family: The Case for National Action."
That made him happy to say that.
Longish quotation, but it gets to something, I believe. Moynihan: the fundamental problem is that of family structure. The Negro family in the urban ghettos is crumbling. A middle class has managed to save itself, but for vast numbers of the unskilled and poorly educated, the fabric of conventional social relationships has all but disintegrated. So long as this situation persists, the cycle of poverty and disadvantage will continue to repeat itself. Close quote. When Moynihan wrote those words, the illegitimacy rate among African Americans was 25%. Today, the illegitimacy rate among white Americans is 36%. Among Hispanics, more than 50%. And among African Americans, more than 70%.
Yes.
Aside from throwing up your hands in despair, what is to be done?
The first thing to be done is to understand.
Are we talking about families being broken up? They just put it a different way.
This is not a legacy of what happened 100 years before the night.
What we can really say, first of all, yes, it is, in particular, the black and Hispanic community. Yes, it is. But families being broken up. A lot of reasons why you don't see as many families as you traditionally did even 10 years ago, as this effect, transfers itself across generations. Okay, it's because the neoliberalization of the economy has literally made it harder to have families. And people like y'all literally argue against every little fucking thing that can make it easier to have a family. For instance, free healthcare. Nope, you gotta pay it out of pocket. Unionization. Y'all are anti-union busters. Y'all make people have bad jobs that pay them like shit. Social safety nets like welfare and social security tweaked in a way that if y'all get married, that counts as dual income, so you no longer apply for it. So, and then promoting the rhetoric of, oh, you got to do it yourself. Everybody has to live by themselves and hustle hard and see through the darkness, and the government shouldn't be there to help you, but the government should be there to hurt you and tell you what you can't do. But damn shows shouldn't be there to actually help give you a hand when you're trying to have a child, a hand when you're trying to take care of other people. So that's y'all fault. Conservative policies have made it harder to have a child. And that's why you don't see families as much. And you even see this disparity in the quote unquote white community is not because people aren't trying hard enough to have children. Best believe people are fucking, but people don't have children and people don't have families in a traditional way because it's unaffordable and unattainable now. Most millennials and people in Generation Z can't afford a house. Most households, you have to have roommates. People are literally living in $900 a month apartment with 2 or 3 other people. So as y'all have progressively made it harder and harder to survive, people are not having families anymore. And people are just wrapping up. People are having abortions. Or people are taking birth control. Because the way that the Republican establishment, especially in the Democrats at times, with their neoliberal asses, helped them along, y'all have made it impossible for people to have a family. Many people grew up imagining themselves having family, having 2 or 3 children, but you can't do it because your job pays you $27.25 an hour. Because you can't afford to go to college. Y'all won't even... Dude, these motherfuckers won't even relieve college students of their student loan debt and are constantly, I paid mine's back, and then it's some hack like this motherfucker where it was only like $750 when you went to college. Now it's like $12,000 or more in student loans people have to pay back, and you think that motherfuckers want to have a family? Ask yourself sometimes, dude, instead of trying to just say people aren't trying hard enough or lazy. Look at the policies that yourself promote. Do you really think a world without public, country, I should say, without public services, without any institutional help for the working person, you think that's the type of world that a person wants to have a family in? Idiot.
Breakdown of the black family is not a legacy of slavery.
Yes, it is.
If you the classic study of this goes all the way back to the era of slavery, and they find that most black kids, even under slavery.
Yes, it is. Its legacy of how it's done does go back to slavery, because you would notice that, especially with how the criminal justice system works and all the fucked up things that happen there, where a lot of inmates in prison ironically work as slaves, and how a lot of black schools are so underfunded they're pretty much just school to prison pipelines, where this structure of keeping black labor cheap, black labor uncompetitive, black labor with the assistance of the police force, institutions within the government, to keep the black labor cheap, to keep the black labor highly profitable and low on pay. That's a legacy from slavery. And ironically, it being a racial, it has a reverberation effect that even hurts working class whites. So yes, this economic structure of how capitalism has been getting further and further deregulated, how our system has been designed in a way to criminalize what it means to be black and keep black people held up a certain way, literally is descended from slavery. And again, it's people like you that maintains this structure of oppression. Because black labor should be competitive. Black labor shouldn't be treated. Black people should be educated in more fields, and at least competing in capitalism better, but they can't because it's $1,300 to go to college. And you're living in an apartment on the 53rd floor with roaches.
Had lived with two parents, and that was true all the way up until the 1960s. And so if you really want to find out what has happened, what started right there? What started? And the fact that whites now,
what started? You're not going to say that the drug war started, are you?
Blacks had when Moynihan wrote suggests that this is something that spreads out. But if you look at something else, if you look at those blacks, and look at black husband-wife families, the poverty rate among such families has been in single digits every year since 1994. And
which is funnily enough, because that might tell you that the only people that can afford to get married are well-off, wealthy black people, and poor black people can't afford to get married, or they're incentivized by our shitty biased welfare system. Because I feel like the way that you can fix this, dude, because I know this argument is going to go to welfare. Just make it so that if you get married, you still qualify for welfare. Just do that. Stop all this bullshit where you're gonna be like, see, like welfare has created poverty in the black community, and that's why we should like get rid of it. Like, no, we could just be like, okay, y'all married, your wife can still get welfare and not work. How about we just do that instead of trying to seize away all forms of government assistance and social safety nets? Because like that's what keeps a lot of fathers out of the home. And also, what about the prison system, prison reform, ending the drug war, police reform in general, so black people aren't arrested for bullshit and put in prison for 10, 15 fucking years? How about we create a neighborhoods and societies where black youth have something to work towards, where black youth can actually make something of themselves? And this shit crosses over to like for instance like Reagan's educated proletariat speech, where a lot of the systems that have been put in place to keep black people poor not only have a reverberation effect, but this stuff is meant to keep black people non-competitive and black labor cheap.
Look at the external causes. Why the husband and wife families and the welfare single mom families all are facing the same society and objective things.
Oh, no, they're not necessarily, dude. I think this is a huge misrepresentation of what could actually, what actually is going on in the black community and the problems that black people face institutionally. I think that's a very dishonest way of framing, because like I said, most people who get married are wealthy people or well-off people. And even sometimes when two people get married, both of them work for a living. So you got some motherfucker making $70,000 a year, and you got people that are making between $25,000 and like $50,000 a year. Of course, the people that are making 70 or more are going to get married, because of course these people are often at the time, if not business owners, they're in management positions, which causes them to have more time to form relationships and get married and take time off the honeymoon and all that other shit. But if every day you have to be on the grind to work in order to make it, you're not going to be trying to get married. You're going to be trying to get that fucking money. Not to mention the fact, I think, what was I going to say? Because he said something else very dishonest. Oh, the integration of black people into capitalism, you will notice, did not fix the problems in our community and our problems in our society. You see, I'm not going to go on a whole spiel about anti-capitalism, but I will say this at the end of the day for people like Jay-Z. Capitalism will not fix problems in the black community. The institution that advises people to step over each other and keep others and keep other people's labor cheap will not fix anything. Next.
You would roll back welfare. I guess that's the principal policy. Okay, so what would Tom Sowell do? One, you'd eliminate welfare, you'd reform welfare. What would you do?
Roll it back.
All right. And what about affirmative action?
Eliminate it.
Just gone.
Yeah.
Colorblind policy.
They did those two things. Number one, ironically enough, dude, this dude's talking about taking away more welfare programs, which won't do anything but create more poverty and crime and create, a power vacuum of poverty in black and white communities alike. This dude will destroy the economy. Because one thing, like I previously said in the video, the more money that people are making, the more money that they have to spend in the economy. And doing dumb shit like that, like further neoliberalizing the economy, will cause the economy to collapse. And this is why Thomas Sowell ain't taken seriously by anybody, because that was really fucking dumb. Because the more money people have, the more they participate in the economy. And the more money people have from the government, the more likely they are to participate in ways to build up their own wealth and get off the welfare eventually. But if you completely roll it back, you will further incentivize and create more cycles of poverty. This is very fucking dumb. And what the fuck else did they say? Affirmative action. They took that away. All those effects are not felt nowadays. I feel like the people that benefited the most from it were white women. But I feel like at the end of the day, I think the ex Kennedy person had a point. Discrimination today for discrimination yesterday. Not to say that we should discriminate against white people, but we're not gonna get into like all the like institutional discrimination that even black intellectuals and professionals face. And there was a reason why that law was necessary.
See completely. All right. What prospect for that do you see?
None.
No black leader of any standing. I'm talking about a political leader as opposed to an intellectual such as yourself. You've got there's you, there's Walter Williams. Do you get the sense that there's a growing generation, a rising generation of African American intellectuals who say, enough of this, I'm with Tom Sowell?
Well, I don't know if they'll go that far. There's no point.
That would be asking a lot.
There's no point being reckless. But
because most black people
I think,
are not like
people
stupid
like
pawns,
Steele and many others,
so
Larry
is
Elder,
that'll
and
never
others.
like be a
And there
thing.
are more such people now than there were, say, in the 1970s. But in terms of political leaders, all the incentives politically are for black leaders to blame all problems in the black community on the larger society, and that enables them to take on the role of being the defender of the black community.
No, what most actual black leftist community leaders that are still alive blame most of the black problems on capitalism, which has a intersectional approach to solving the problems in our community that'll also uplift everybody in the fucking country. So it's like ahistorical numb-brain bullshit where he's trying to say that because they're dog whistling again that black civil rights advocates blame problems on white people is simply not true. Close this out, dude. I gotta go.
Against enemies, which in turn creates the situation in which many blacks don't feel that anything that they do is going to.
No. Because you can understand oppression and how socioeconomic depravity works while still working hard. Like, I'm a fucking black socialist, a fucking believer in the social gospel. But guess what? I still get my ass up and go to work every day. I still try. I've never been to jail. I'm married. I'm still pushing forward to try to be the best man that I can be in a society that is rigged to discriminate against me and not accept me for who I am. So this bullshit we're learning about socioeconomic oppression causes you to not want to try is just a lie. You're just lying.
It's going to help themselves unless it's done politically as a group. That there's no point. I mean, why would you, if you believe what
because
they say,
being an individual makes it easier for you to be exploited by the system. So you should work together against the system, even across racial lines. You ever thought about that? Because they try to sell individualism as this fantastical thing that'll actually fix a lot of your problems, but when you really get down to this shit and you think about, individualism, it does nothing but make you easier to exploit and take advantage of. It does not make you stronger. Okay, guys, I'm about to go. Well, I guess we can say nothing of value was learned here.